Wars are often not won by those who have the greater numbers, but by those who use their minds better. If everything depended only on the number of soldiers, it would not be possible in history for smaller armies to defeat much larger forces. In that case, what we call war would be nothing more than a simple calculation where the side with more soldiers wins. But reality is very different. Here are 7 interesting war tactics used throughout history to defeat enemies. Timur's secret weapon, camels. During his campaign in India, Timur learned that his enemies were using elephants as weapons of war. He had to find a solution against these massive animals. When the Delhi Sultanate army launched an attack with elephants, Timur's plan came into action. Flammable materials were placed on the humps of camels and they were set on fire. The camels, engulfed in flames, were driven directly toward the elephants. Terrified of fire, the elephants panicked and began to retreat. However, this retreat resulted in them trampling their own army. At that exact moment, Timur's army launched an attack and achieved a decisive victory, and India was conquered in a short time. Hulagu Khan and the Hashashins. Hulagu Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, was advancing into Persian lands with a massive Mongol army. On his path were the Hashashins, founded by Hassani Saba. Initially, they were not the primary target of the Mongols, but Hulagu Khan wanted to capture this fortress to demonstrate his power. Alamut Castle was built on a steep mountain and was nearly impossible to capture using conventional siege methods. So the Mongols tried a different approach. They dug beneath the fortress, filled it with oil and gunpowder, and then detonated it with a massive explosion. The so-called unconquerable fortress was completely destroyed, and the era of the Hashashins came to an end. General Zhuge Liang and the empty fort strategy. In the 200s AD, a major power struggle was taking place between 3 states in China. During this time, a fortress belonging to the Shu Han state was under siege. Inside the fortress, there were only about 100 soldiers under the command of General Zhuge Liang. Knowing that he could not defend the fortress against tens of thousands of enemies, the general employed an unusual strategy. He ordered all his soldiers to hide and had the fortress gates fully opened. He even placed children playing outside the gates. When the enemy army saw this scene, they believed it was certainly a trap. As a result, they did not dare to attack and instead retreated. Thus, the battle was postponed, at least for a while. King Goujian in the front lines. Around 2,500 years ago, the Yue state ruled in China. At its head was King Goujian, who had discovered the importance of psychological warfare early on. In battles, he would place prisoners sentenced to death at the very front of his army. When the 2 armies faced each other, by the king's command, these men would kneel before the enemy and be executed simultaneously. Seeing this, the enemy soldiers would be struck with fear and would be psychologically defeated even before the battle began. The Battle of Pelusium. In 525 BC, the Achaemenid Empire entered Egyptian territory and captured several regions. The Egyptian army quickly regrouped and confronted the Persians at Pelusium. However, King Cambyses II had a very unusual plan. He ordered his army to gather cats from the surrounding areas and tie them to their shields, because for the Egyptians, cats were considered sacred. During the battle, the possibility of harming these animals completely destroyed the morale of the Egyptian army. As a result, around 50,000 Egyptians lost their lives, while Persian losses were only about 7,000. Aztec death whistle. Throughout history, many civilizations have used music as a tool in warfare. However, the Aztecs took this method to a completely different level. Whistle instruments made from skulls, discovered in excavations, produced sounds that closely resembled human screams. Before battle, thousands of warriors would use these whistles. The screams echoing through the forest created the illusion that people were being slaughtered. Hearing this, enemy soldiers would collapse psychologically, even before the battle had begun. Russia and anti-tank dogs. During World War II, the Soviet Union was searching for a solution against German tanks, and they developed a very harsh method. Explosives were attached to dogs, and they were trained to run under tanks. The plan was to detonate these explosives remotely. However, since Soviet tanks were also present on the battlefield, the dogs often ran toward their own tanks. For this reason, the method was not always successful. Nevertheless, it is known that some German tanks were destroyed in this way,